Okay. Your voices are being recorded.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please, thank you. Go ahead. Ashton. Go ahead and have your notes down. We're going to continue talking about the Iran-Iraq war. Yes? Yes. Okay. You're in school.
I'm just sitting here.
So, thank you, McKinley, for recording that, posting that on Google Classroom. For those of you guys at home, I'll be uploading this video. You're like, what? What's going on? Yeah. We had the audio yesterday because Mr. Hanson is not the most technically gifted person in the world, because I can learn something and then forget it. So here, you guys remind me, if my camera doesn't work in the future, just say, Mr. Hanson, have you tried taking the battery out and putting it back in? That works.
That does.
Well, why didn't you tell me that yesterday,
Well,
Glenn?
I didn't know it was battery.
Oh, don't be shy. Step in.
I didn't know
It
how
was a junior last time, about a month or so ago. I couldn't get the thing, and he goes, have you tried taking the battery? I'm like, that sounds stupid. I did it, it worked. That sounds really intelligent, so I just need to remember that. Right? Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, it's like, who makes these, I don't know, whatever, I'm not in charge of making technology, but I'm glad it was a simple solution, as opposed to, your camera's broken and you need to replace it. Don't want to go there. All right, so, just as a reminder, because some of you guys weren't here, what you need to do, reminder, send in to me and Miss Holiday your IA. Okay? Right?
For all of them.
Yeah, the number's for all of them.
It is the same number. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to repeat a little bit in a quick fashion. Your candidate number for all of your things, and those of you guys, when you come in May and you write down your, to actually take the exams, you will not be putting your name, you'll be putting your candidate number, and you will basically have it memorized. Okay, yesterday it sounds like this is the first time some of you guys learned your candidate number. Mary, what's your candidate number?
I know it.
Yeah, you know it, but what is it?
It ends in 11.
Does it? Okay, there we go. And the first part is like 003973-00, and then, so like, Libby, there's 08. Don't question me, that is what it is.
Wait, I didn't hear you. Oh my goodness.
Zero 3973-0008. Okay? Jacob. Good. Okay? Frank. 18. Okay? Anybody else? Len, you got yours? Anybody else not here last time? Roger, you were here last time. Anybody else? Okay? All right. Yeah, and then rename, listen carefully. Rename it, the document, this is your name and then history IA. Okay. The other things you needed to do is change the document before you submit it. Take off, like on the cover page, put in your candidate number instead of your name. If you haven't put pagination in there already, make sure to do that. Page number. It's a fancy word, your page number.
Is it? It's a big word.
Big word. It's like a page-nation. Yeah.
Do you know what international baccalaureate spelled out?
Yes.
Yes. No.
Yes. Yes.
But if you want to, that's fine.
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. Can you spell international baccalaureate
International
without spell check?
baccalaureate, information technology, and global
Right.
perspective.
Anyway. All right. Any other questions about that? Get those submitted to me ASAP. You're going to be hearing about that if you haven't already as you finish up your IA and your EE and other kinds of things, because those will be submitted too. Okay? And just as a reminder, because I wasn't aware of this, apparently history, all of them are going in, at least that's what it looks like, which is a bit of a change, as opposed to in the past where I would give my scores and then get a sample of about a quarter to a third of the students and then have those students send theirs in, but apparently all of them are going in. Okay? All right. Any other technical kinds of things and so forth? Here's something that you guys probably isn't going to impact you at all. It looks like, actually it will, because there's gonna be more people in the building probably after spring break. It looks like probably what's gonna happen is we'll go back to, actually, it will impact you, an A, B, or, block schedule after spring break. It looks like that's probably what's gonna be happening. So your lunches will be longer. No, I mean seriously, that's like 20 minutes longer. Cause you won't have all those like, you know, little hallway things between these short periods.
Wait, what?
You say that again?
Okay, I'll say it again.
Longer lunch?
What?
Why are we getting longer lunch again?
Here's the deal, everyone listen, so that nobody else is in the same position of not being cognizant of what exactly probably is gonna happen, right? They've been doing a survey of the parents, apparently the parents are saying, get these kids out of the house, get them to school, although not on Monday, okay? So, in school, because I asked Ms. Anderson, and, he's like, are we gonna go back to like a block schedule, or are we gonna continue this 8-period day? Answer, block schedule. So, juniors are like, yay, doesn't mean we have homework in every single time, every single day.
1,000 times easier.
So, and I'm okay with that, and it actually benefits because the lunch period, right now, we're like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, all these little breaks and so forth, and that got taken out of your lunch, yeah. So lunch is pretty short right now, it becomes longer when we go back to lunch. I think after spring break.
When are we doing
We're gonna get that
I
shared.
just heard.
You said it right after you said it.
I know.
no more social distancing and all that either?
I think that's
I
gonna be
said it
very
after.
practical. I think that, coverings are still going to be, required, but they're doing that in West Ada, they're doing that in Boise, and they're doing that in a number of the other school districts.
Like, do we have to social distance, or like, we share a buddy, and it's like, go and have it?
I'll let you ask me. I'll let you ask. I mean, it's hard, because it's like, are we through? No, we're not through. Are we trying to get back to a normal situation where you're getting as much education as possible? Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be able to, like, it'll work out for me, especially for the other classes. You guys already have the advantage built in that we were able to drop a whole unit, thanks to IB, basically saying you guys don't have to write as many essays. So we're already good. And in addition, we're already seeing most of you guys in person, like every single day. Sometimes we like get to communicate through you technologically, or you get to sit down in the comfort of your own home and watch me or listen to me.
Same kid. I know you've already stated this before, but I'm just curious. What unit did we drop?
Authoritarian governments, it's a paper 2 unit. It was the third paper 2 unit because you used to have to write 2 essays, paper 2 essays, now you just have to do 1. And I always like to give students the opportunity of having more choice than less. This time now, you guys are going to be looking at the 4 questions that will be posited on relevant things that we've covered, like paper 2, Cold War, paper 2, 20th Century Wars. You look at those 4 essay choices, you'll pick 1.
Would it have been similar to the authoritarian government we did in unit?
There is some overlap. Basically on that one, you guys were like, oh, well, how were we going to do that unit? That unit was going to be me assigning you each a different country, and you were going to come in here and do like a 30-some-odd minute presentation.
Oh, so it would have been awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You guys are like, woo, that was close.
20 different 30-minute presentation?
Yeah, we basically would, it would be about a month long. So. Yeah, last year, the seniors were in the midst of doing that when everything like broke loose and, yeah. So we finished that up, and then, since they canceled the exams, like the essay part, we were, and they'd already done their IAs, just like you guys, they'd already done their IAs, we got those submitted, that was good. So we were just like, and how they doing their IAs? They did great. It was awesome, it was amazing. Okay, just like you guys. But, are you ready to write the essay? They didn't have to. Are you ready to write the essay? No, that's going to be the month of April. Okay? We've got 2 more wars to go through, Iran, Iraq, and then the Persian Gulf War. And then we got genocide. Don't forget genocide, okay? Buckle up, kids. I'm doing that now with my 11th graders because they're like getting into the race of Nanking, and that's not much fun. So, yeah, when you see them on tomorrow and Friday, yeah. Wow, Trenton, you're so sensitive.
No, insensitive.
I was being sarcastic. All right, here we go. Back to the Iran-Iraq War. All right, we're doing the first part, type, nature, and the combatants in war. Obviously, this is going to be, write this down, total war for Iraq and for Iran. Total war. Full on. This matters. It's not like some of the wars we've been able to fight in recent history. We're like, oh, we sent some guys over, and they fight, and then we're like, oh, are you still at war? Do we still have troops over in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
In Iraq and Iran, during this 8-year, or 9-year war, it's total. It is full on. Ashton, they both end up losing a lot of people, of money. It is not a clear victory for either side. We haven't got to the details there. We talked about like some of the different sides supporting. So, for example, Lenny, you were listening yesterday. What countries support Iran? That should be an easy one.
Oh, yeah.
The Ayatollah Khomeini. What countries are in support of Iran?
Landon, do you need some help?
I think I do need some help.
Starts with an S, rhymes with Syria.
Wow, Syria.
That's about it. Although, Landon, if you were paying close attention, as I'm sure you were because you were tuned in, what country had provided the previous government of Iran, before the Khomeini, before the Ayatollahs, before the Islamic fundamentalists came to power, what country had provided Iran under the Shah with lots of really good modern weapons?
The dudes.
Yeah. We're not going to let him off that easy. Landon, how? Julian, you're up next.
Yes, sir.
Quiet. How did the Iranians, since we didn't get along with them, you know that hostage thing and
Yeah, that was
stuff like that, since we didn't really like them, how are they going to be able to manage to get replacement parts for those U.S.-made weapons?
Kidnapping people and
Good,
taking
keep
them
going.
hostage and getting money from that because they were hostage. Yeah.
Yeah, money, actually, this is important. This is an important detail. We didn't so much hand over money to the Iranians. The Iranians don't necessarily want to get money. They want something. And what they wanted was the ability to purchase those weapons parts, because those are going to be very valuable to them. And then, of course, on our side, we took the money secretly and filtered it to, thank you very much, the Contras, which was in violation of the law, which is why it was a scandal. And President Reagan resigned. No, he didn't.
What did he?
I thought Reagan wasn't like impeached and forced out of office because of that.
It was the dude, not the vice
Who
president?
took the fall?
Not the vice president.
Ollie North. And President Reagan could say with a fair amount of believability that he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was going on. Just be ready for that, you know, because being president, you have to be responsible for lots of various different things. And if you're not full on 100% in your game, paying attention to everything going on in the White House, stuff can happen. And then people are like, hey, did you know that was going on? And you're like, no. He apologized for it. And it was a scandal. It didn't look good. All right, let's get back to the details here. The guy who actually starts the war, write this down, is going to be Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq. Okay? Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq. And we're going to be talking quite a bit about Saddam Hussein. He is Arab. He is Muslim. What kind of Muslim, Rodrigo? Shiite or Sunni? He's starting it right. Sooner the better you give me the answer. That's right, very good. And then, what about this guy? What was his variant of Islam? Shiite. Say that without hesitation. Shiite is the Islamic variation for, he is Shiite. And here's the deal. I mean, write this down because this matters for some people within Islam. I mean, it's like among folks like within Christianity, they're like, oh, Protestant, Catholic, whatever, no big deal. Or you're Orthodox, that's cool. Oh, the big fat Greek wedding, whatever. But, and the same thing within Muslims. Within Muslims, some of them could care less whether you're Shiite or Sunni or whatever. It's not a big deal. But, put this down. Among people who feel very strongly, some of the most extreme elements within those groups, they look at the other side and go, man, you're even worse than an infidel, somebody who's not even Muslim. Because you're claiming to be Muslim as the true Muslim, and you've got it all wrong. Therefore, you deserve to die. Did you follow that? So, Ayatollah Khomeini is not really fond of Sunnis. Raise your hand, I bet you could guess this. Raise your hand if you can identify a current extreme Islamic group that is Sunni identified, and they're engaged in all kinds of terrorist activities. We thought they got beaten down in Syria and Iraq, but they're actually starting to rise up again. Raise your hand if you can identify them. It's got 3 letters. The first one starts with I. Very good. It's ISIS. They're Sunni, and they can't stand Shiite. Did I say 3?
Yeah.
Oh, you would have got it right away if I had done it correctly. It's ISIS.
No.
Yeah. Yes, question. Sorry. S-H-I space I-T-E. Sometimes you do a dash or sometimes just a space.
H-I-I-T-E.
S-H-I-I-T-E. Sometimes I see a dash or a space between the 2 I's. Just so that you know, it's 2 syllable. Shiite as opposed to that. Yeah.
Did we get a handout for this? Or am I just like in the dark here? Is it?
Yeah,
What page is it?
Page 2, bottom half.
Oh.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking through it. I'm like, where is this?
Good for you. All right, here we go. Here's what you need to know about Saddam Hussein. Unlike the leader and the leadership of Iran, which is an Islamic government, make sure you have that down. Iran's government is an Islamic government. The leaders are the top Islamic clerics in that country. You understand that? That's Iran. So Ayatollah Khomeini, Ayatollah is a designation of like, a bishop. That would be an analogy. Yeah? Yes. But think of him as being the top political/religious leader of Iran.
And he wasn't Muslim.
Muslim is Islam. A Muslim follows the religion of Islam. And within Islam, he is the Shiite variety. Okay? Yeah. In a sense of it, they sort of have a democracy, but it doesn't really operate that way. These guys are in charge. I mean, they have elections, but they'll actually tell you, oh, look, you can't run for election. You have to be in good graces with the Islamic leadership. Does that make sense? There's not too many countries in the world that have like a religious-based government. Iran is one of them. Okay? Iraq is not religious-based. Okay? Make sure you have that. Saddam Hussein runs his dictatorship as a secular government. Secular meaning non-religious. This is important that you understand this, because we're going to be trying to define and tease out various different nuances in this part of the world, and you need to understand. He's Sunni, but Is that what's really motivating him? No. He's the head of a political party. Write this down. It's called the Ba'ath Political Party. B-A-A-T-H. The Ba'ath Party. And it is the only political party that is allowed to operate in his country. Who is in his Ba'ath Party? Well, people who want to move ahead under his military dictatorship, his political dictatorship. B-A-A-T-H. It's in the handout, I believe. Ba'ath. Oh, I don't have it in there, sorry. I'll spell it for you. Yeah, Ba'ath Party. B-A-T-H. Okay? Think of that, well, it's not really communist, certainly not communist, although they are allies, friends with the Soviet Union. We already identified that. Okay? Soviets are like, hey, we're going to have good relations with Iraq, and they're working with Saddam Hussein, and yada, yada, yada. Okay? The Ba'ath political party, it has Arab Christians in it, so some of his top people are in that very small minority within Iraq of Arab Christians, not a lot of them. Probably the one group that does the best within his governance, write it down, are the Sunnis. And those are going to be the people living more in, we need to identify, maps are going to be very helpful for us here. Sort of central, but not all the way to the north. The central part of Iraq is going to be the living area for more of the Sunnis, Arab Sunnis. So you're going to tell me, in the north, you talked about them before. They're Muslim, they're not Arab, they're the Kurds in the north. Okay, very good. And in the south, they're Muslim, they're Arab, but they're not Sunni. Therefore, they are Shiite. Very good. Put this down. Kurds, not very much in Saddam Hussein's government. In fact, I would be surprised if any of them are in his government. Not very many Shiites as well. Right? So which group of people within Iraq is most connected with Saddam Hussein's government? Which? Sunni, Muslim, Arab. And he came to power in the most brutal fashion, and he wants to maintain power in the most brutal fashion, as we see that the story. I mean, he's a fascinating person. Ultimately, we're going to be at odds with this guy in 2 wars in the United States history, and we're going to beat him in both. And in the second one, he's going to end up trying to find shelter in a hole in the ground, where he will ultimately be found by U.S. forces, handed over to the Iraqis themselves, and they will ultimately exact punishment on him.
So how did he operate a secular government when the country was so religious?
Well, this country operates a secular government.
Yeah,
There's a lot of religious people in this country.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but I mean, the government itself is not officially.
So is it like a separation of church and state thing?
Yeah, yeah. So think of it this way: if you were in Iran, what is the basis of law? The Quran.
Yeah.
If you're in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, what is the basis of law? Whatever he says. Now he's going to give. Make sure you understand this. He gives credence. I mean, he's not stupid in the sense that he's not going to make laws that upset Sunni Muslim sensibilities.
Okay.
But let's put it this way: if you want to sell tobacco and sell alcohol and so forth, you got a much better chance of getting away with that in Iraq. In Iran, they will kill you because those are, capital punishment offenses. Okay? Put this down. Saddam Hussein actually will support Marxists in Iran during the war. The idea is, well, if their enemy is my enemy, then I will help them. You can see a little bit of that going on in the war. So put that down kind of on the side of Saddam Hussein. He's going to try and support Marxists. They go by the initials MEK. Right? So they're basically Iranian Marxists. And if you're a communist in Iran, are you happy with the Islamic government? No. Let's see if we can figure this one out. Guess who the Iranians support that live in Iraq that don't like Saddam Hussein. That's one group, okay? Although Saddam Hussein is going to try to be very careful, because that's a large group. I want to say, I mean, it's like pretty much all the southern part of Iraq. I want to say it's close to half, if not maybe a little bit more than half of the entire Iraqi population is Shiite. No, haven't heard it yet. Raise your hand if you tell me. I'll give you a clue, really big clue. They're the people up in the northern part of Iraq. The Kurds, very good, so write that down. The Kurds are going to be giving support to Iran, and Iran will try to support the Kurds. And so when the war is over, don't be surprised when, actually, even during the war, Saddam Hussein will be like, wow, I don't like you Kurds. What kind of weapons do you suppose he's going to use against the Kurds, the Iranians, whatever he can get his hands on? This is important you understand that. In fact, write it down right now. Saddam Hussein will use chemical weapons against the enemy, or anyone he perceives as the enemy, including civilian populations, including areas in the north where the Kurds live. They'll drop chemical weapons, and dogs and women and children and anybody else who's within the range will be dead.
Did you kill the dog?
That's what happens when you use chemical weapons.
It's like getting mad about the dog.
He was hung ultimately. Right? We'll get to that later.
Fire or just...
There will also be, let's go ahead. We dive into the war now. All right, origins and causes of the war. Okay? All right, origins and causes of the war. Disputes between the two peoples on either side of this boundary go back long ago. Okay? Even back into the time of like the Ottoman Empire and so forth. These specific two countries, Iraq and Iran, have disputes that exist that will lead up to this current fight, particularly over two areas. You ready? Watch this. Because you need to write this down. One of the areas is referred to as the Shatt al-Arab waterway. It looks very small, but it is incredibly critical to Iran as well as Iraq. Iraq wants this Shatt al-Arab waterway, full access to it, and Iran has it. Iraq doesn't like that they don't have control of it, because you can sort of see by looking at the map here that this big country of Iraq, or at least relatively decent-sized country of Iraq, has very little direct access to the water. And why is direct access to the water important? For trade, exactly. For port facilities. And what is one of the biggest exports of Iraq? By the way, it's also a big export for Iran. Write it down. Oil. Oil, oil, oil. These are both oil-rich countries. Okay? Who do you suppose actually created the boundary so that Iraq hardly had any access to the water? It was the British, yeah, it was the British. Because the British got control of this after World War I, right? This used to be Ottoman Turkish territory. The British had it as a mandate. So the British were going, okay, well, you know what? We're going to draw these various different lines. And let me tell you something that's very important. Because the British could have included in Iraq this little area right here. It isn't even designated on the map here. It's a country.
Kuwait.
It's called Kuwait. K-U-W-A-I-T. It's called Kuwait. And write this down. Saddam Hussein always said, those British, those dang British, they hampered us in our very early stages as a country by not giving us what really they should have, which is Kuwait. Access to the water. Because they didn't want them to be too powerful like that. I mean, that was sort of, if you go back and you look at the history and so forth, you're like, well, you know, and plus there were some folks in that region, because if you look at the Persian Gulf region, how many small countries were created, Arab countries, sitting on a pretty nice little chunk of oil? United Arab Emirates, Dubai, let me see if we can see some of those. United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Oman doesn't have too much, so forth. Bahrain, Qatar, You go to Qatar, and Qatar's like, hey, we can host the World Cup soccer game. We got money. We're just like filthy rich in oil. We'll do that. So the Kuwaitis, people living in that area, got their own country. Iraq wasn't happy about it. Keep note of that. Okay. When did Iraq gain its independence? Not too long before World War II.
Why doesn't Iraq just like attack Kuwait?
They will.
Oh, okay.
That's how the Persian Gulf War. They will. But in this war, and I told you last time, in this war, who does Kuwait support? Iraq. Iraq. That common Arab connection.
What, even though they were invaded by...
They haven't been invaded yet.
But they're gonna be...
Oh, great! Go ahead, look into the future. Find out who your enemies are. You might be surprised. They were your friends.
Yeah, Mary's your enemy.
And I've actually kind of already told you this. All right, I've already kind of spoiled it. Kuwait, they loaned lots of money to the Iraqis during the war. After the war, no real winner except they have massive debt. Iran and Iraq. This is what happens in history sometimes when you have massive debt to a country or a person or bank. You're like, wow, can we renegotiate the terms of the debt? Oh, we can't? No, I mean seriously, if you go back to the Middle Ages, why sometimes did a local European noble go along with like the murdering of a local Jewish banker? Because he owed him money. It's like, wow, person dead, no more debt. And then of course that guy's like, I need money. Goes to another Jewish banker.
Take this money and kills him.
Hey, can I see some references? You know. So yeah, Saddam Hussein will attack Kuwait in the Persian Gulf War. Follow up.
So, I'm assuming Kuwait won because they still exist.
Yeah, we helped them win the Persian Gulf War.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be our last
Now
part.
we're just
We'll
really
flow really nicely from this.
So earlier you said there was conflict over two areas, shuttle or the waterway, and then another.
Yes, it is. It's this Khuzestan province. You see that?
So many
Khuzestan.
Yeah, I know.
Right. Is that in the handout? I think I put that in there as well.
That's the only one I remember.
Yeah. Is that, yep, there we go. Origins, causes. Khuzestan province is Iranian. It is populated primarily by Arabs. Okay, so it's a border region. We've seen that in history before. Germany, France, border region, populated by somebody from the other side.
What these province of it?
Khuzestan.
It's just its own thing.
It's part of Iran.
Oh, okay, that's right, I got you.
Yeah. And Saddam Hussein's like, hey, that should be part of our country.
Yeah, we're teaming.
Okay? So we got these various
Teaming
different
Kuwait.
territorial disputes as well as some of these sort of long ongoing differences and so forth. I mean, honestly, can you get along with a country across the border that speaks another language, that has another religion that is predominant? Sure, why not? Well, I tell you what, put this down. Both sides are going to be supporting elements in the other country that are trying to overthrow that country. You understand? Which is why both of those guys are going to look at the other with a great deal of distrust and justified distrust.
Okay, so there were no winners in this war. Iraq had most of the support from other countries.
They
But,
still got to do the fighting.
but
themselves.
everyone hated Saddam Hussein.
But what do you mean everyone?
I'm just saying, like, most
You're jumping
people-
ahead of things.
I'm just asking.
Did the
like,
United States hate Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War?
Yeah. Okay.
But really, we knew this guy.
No.
Oh my gosh, no! No! This guy,
No, not back there.
Iran.
no, he's not communist.
Yeah, that's why we know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, no, our attitude during that war, and we pretty much stayed out of it, obviously. But as far as like, if you ask the American public, you have like a favorite in the Iran-Iraq war, and we're like, and some people were being really nasty, and they're like, well, if a whole bunch of them kill each other, that just works out real well for us. Whoa. But, no, I mean, if people took sides, they're like, well, we hate this guy, Don't know much about him. That's not that. I mean, that's about it. Ultimately, we'll hate him. We will. Although historically, we're going to look and go, man, he made a stupid decision here, attacking Iran. He made a stupid decision attacking Kuwait. And then he made a stupid decision hiding from his specter whether or not there were weapons of mass destruction in his own country.
He sounds kind of stupid.
Which prompted us to attack him, overthrow him for the second time. And yeah. So he does make some pretty massive blunders in his political career. All right, here we go. 1974, leading into this fight, 1974, 75, there was a border war between Iraq and Iran, and this is even before Ayatollah Khomeini comes into power, okay? They will establish an agreement called the Algiers Agreement in 1975, the Algiers Agreement, which will ostensibly try to create some understandings of who can use the Shatt al-Arab waterway, the Iranians, and allowing the Iraqis to use that as well. So this is 1975. Of course, the big thing that is going to impact and lead ultimately to this war is, write it down, 1979. The Iranian Islamic Revolution, where in Iran, the Shah was overthrown, and this guy came into power. 1979, the Islamic revolution in Iran. The Ayatollahs take control. They hate the United States. Obviously held our folks hostage, so we don't like them. They're not really big fans of the Soviet Union either. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. And he also hates Saddam Hussein.
He hates everything else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you can figure this out. Raise your hand if you can figure this out. Ayatollah Khomeini starts to stir up problems, stir up people in Iraq, trying to get them to be against Saddam Hussein's government and maybe overthrow him. Now, ultimately, you know that the Kurds up in the north, they're going to be prompting that, but they're only powerful up in the north. They're limited to just that northern region. But what is the largest population group in Iraq that Ayatollah Khomeini might go, hey, look, I know you're Arab, I'm Persian, but whatever, we're the same type of Muslim. The what? The Shiites in the south. Write that down. In the south, that is where the Ayatollah Khomeini is trying to get those Arab Shiites to start rising up against Saddam Hussein. You understand that? Ultimately, by the way, you guys know today, let me see, if the majority of the population in Iraq is Shiite, what is the government of Iraq predominantly influenced by? Shiite. And who wants to, and actually does, have a lot of influence on the current Iraqi government? What country, what neighboring country of Iraq has a lot of influence over the government of Iraq today? Which is like you're scratching your head going, so we overthrew Saddam Hussein, and then ultimately, surprise, surprise, shouldn't be a surprise, the government that ultimately exists is on pretty good terms with the Iranian government. Okay? So what do you suppose Saddam Hussein does in response to that? Is he going to try and stir up support, or stir up difficulty within Iran? Heck yeah, where? Kurdistan. Yeah, this is the latter part. This is like right up until the war gets started. Yeah. So Saddam Hussein's like, you can play that thing. Okay. We're going to stir up some problems in Kurdistan among Arabs living in your country. See if you like that. So we've got a lot of this sort of like, not official war, but really stirring things up. You understand that? So the relations between those two countries are really, really bad. Arab riots in Kurdistan, anti-Ba'ath, anti-Saddam Hussein riots in the Shia areas in southern Iraq. This is all taking place in early 1980. So who is officially going to get this war started? Because they're not treating each other very well. Iraq starts the war. September 22nd, 1988. Excuse me, 1980. You ready? You ready for a war? Okay, here we go. Saddam Hussein starts the war September 22nd, 1980. And as you can see, here we go. There's the war map. Much of the war is going to be taking place along the border region. Okay, much of the fighting is going to be taking place along the border region. Saddam Hussein, you would think, would have the advantage since he is the initial fighter, launches the initial wave against Iran. But, let's see, the nature of the war, it's not going to be as effective as he wants. He wants to go deep into Iran, but the Iranians are able to put up a bit of a fight. Okay? Which is interesting because let me tell you this about Iran. Okay? Iran is going to defend that initial wave. Although, they have some disadvantages. One, the command of the Iranian military has undergone a complete changeover. Because the Iranian military, before the Ayatollah came into power, who was their boss? The Shah, who was yeah, so when the Ayatollah Khomeini came in, they just like removed like all of these generals in the Air Force and the Army. And of course, for the Air Force, you got the additional problem of spare parts, which ultimately they were able to solve part of that by taking hostages and then buying parts from the United States in a secret deal and so forth. Okay? Having said that, though, Iran has a bit of an advantage in the air component of the war. Which is like, you kill your generals, you get rid of your generals in the Air Force, you don't have all the spare parts you need, but you can still beat the Iraqi Air Force. Okay? Shows that the Iraqi Air Force is not that good. Right? Even with Soviet support. But remember, Soviet support. You see how the Soviet Union doing? Is the Soviet Union going to commit to like a full-on military involvement in Iraq? No. Where were they already tied down in the early 1980s? In Afghanistan. Yeah, that wasn't necessarily working out too well for them. So, I mean, they'll sell parts and so forth and weapons, but ultimately Saddam Hussein is going to be responsible for that. Put this down, though. The Iranian army is going to undergo a complete changeover. They will create what is called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. And you need to know this about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard in Iran. They're motivated. They fully support the political religious objectives of Khomeini. They are motivated. And they're going to do a pretty decent job of defending against onslaughts by the Iraqi military. Oh my gosh. And then when they run into people, they just send over like human sacrifice suicide runners. Oh, that's next time. Yeah. We'll talk about those guys. What do we do about this minefield? I don't know. Send a bunch of guys over there and they'll blow up the minefield. And then we can send the regular army through. We'll wrap that up next time.
Wrap that up.